My name is Melissa Turner. I am a nurse, I am 38 years old, and live in Tucson, Arizona. A few months ago, my life was completely turned upside down. I am not a pastor, nor a theologian. I am an ordinary woman who believed in God, but I went on with my life like everyone else, full of haste, distractions, work, bills, and often forgot the essentials. For years, I have heard about fasting. I saw people fasting, some for spiritual reasons, others for diets. I tried it myself a few times, but I never really understood why. It was more out of obligation than faith. Until I died. Yes, my heart stopped. And in that brief moment when life drained from my body, Jesus took me to a place where time didn't exist and revealed to me something that changed everything I thought about fasting. What he showed me will shock you. If you have ever fasted or have doubts about the real power of spiritual fasting, this message is for you. And if you've never fasted, maybe this video will wake you up to something much bigger than you think. Leave your like, comment below if you've had experiences with fasting, and share this message with someone who needs to hear it. Before everything happened, my life was completely normal, or at least it seemed to be. I was that woman who was always racing against the clock. Shifts at the hospital, children at school, food to make, bills to pay, and a constant attempt to keep everything in balance. I grew up in a Christian home, learned to pray, and went to church on Sundays. But over time, faith became a backdrop, something that was there, but without an active presence in my daily life. Fasting for me was a mystery, something distant. I listened to the pastors talk about him, read Bible stories of people who fasted for miracles, deliverances, transformations. But honestly, I thought it was something from ancient times. When I first tried to fast, I couldn't stand half a day. I got irritated, got a headache, and ended up eating, saying to myself, God knows my heart. And it was true. He knew it. But I didn't know his. Deep down, there was a hunger in my soul that no earthly food could fulfill. I felt this emptiness in quiet moments, like when I looked at the ceiling at night and asked myself, am I living the right way? But soon the noise of the routine came, and I was distracted again, until on a seemingly ordinary morning, something happened. An important detail: in the days before my death, a restlessness took hold of me. I began to feel a strange calling, as if God is trying to tell me something. I woke up at dawn with my heart racing. I had intense dreams about lights, battles, and prayers. I even commented to a colleague at the hospital. I feel like something is about to happen, but I don't know what. And it happened. But nothing in the world could prepare me for what would come next. Before everything happened, my life was completely normal. Or at least it seemed to be. I was that woman who was always racing against the clock. Shifts at the hospital, children at school, food to make, bills to pay, and a constant attempt to keep everything in balance. I grew up in a Christian home, learned to pray, and went to church on Sundays. But over time, faith became a backdrop, something that was there, but without an active presence in my daily life. Fasting for me was a mystery, something distant. I listened to the pastors talk about him, read Bible stories of people who fasted for miracles, deliverances, transformations. But honestly, I thought it was something from ancient times. When I first tried to fast, I couldn't stand half a day. I got irritated, got a headache, and ended up eating, saying to myself, God knows my heart. And it was true. He knew it. But I didn't know his. Deep down, there was a hunger in my soul that no earthly food could fulfill. I felt this emptiness in quiet moments, like when I looked at the ceiling at night and asked myself, am I living the right way? But soon the noise of the routine came, and I was distracted again, until on a seemingly ordinary morning, something happened. An important detail: in the days before my death, a restlessness took hold of me. I began to feel a strange calling, as if God is trying to tell me something. I woke up at dawn with my heart racing. I had intense dreams about lights, battles, and prayers. I even commented to a colleague at the hospital, "I feel like something is about to happen, but I don't know what." And it happened, but nothing in the world could prepare me for what would come next. Floating out of the body, the beginning of spiritual experience. I kept climbing, floating through a tunnel that was neither dark nor light. It was made of a living, pulsating light. It was as if God's very presence was in every particle around me. I saw no walls, but I felt that I was being guided gently, as if invisible hands were leading me along that sacred path. My thoughts were clear. I knew exactly what was going on. And even though I knew I had left my body behind, there was no despair, no confusion. On the contrary, something inside me said, "You're going home." The peace was so intense that it made me cry. But they were different tears. Tears of relief, as if I were finally freeing myself from a weight that I had carried for years without realizing it. Anxiety, fear of death, guilt, everything fell apart there. It was as if my soul was being washed. It was then that an even stronger light came forward. So intense that my spirit bowed automatically, not because I was afraid, but because that light had consciousness. There was love. He had power. It was him, Jesus. He didn't have to say who it was. I knew. My spirit knew. His presence enveloped me like a hug on a cold day. A love so absolute that I felt every part of my soul being healed just by standing before him. Your eyes. I'll never forget it. It was like looking at the ocean and seeing all the answers to all the questions I once had. He looked inside me. There were no masks, there were no defenses, only truth and grace. He didn't speak first, he just looked at me. And in that look, I understood that he knew me better than I knew myself. Then he smiled, and he said, "You have questions, daughter, and I have answers." The encounter with Jesus, indescribable light and love. When Jesus spoke to me, his voice wasn't just sound, it was life. Every word pierced my soul like waves of warmth and peace. It was as if every cell of my being vibrated in response. The place where we were was made of light, but it was no ordinary light. It was a light that breathed, that he loved, that it was him. He was not dressed in luxurious robes or golden crowns. And yet, I've never seen so much majesty in anyone. The glory that emanated from him needed no symbols. The very air around him seemed to bow in worship. His feet touched the floor of a platform of light, but it was as if he was over time, over space, over everything. And there I was. A simple woman, imperfect, with so many errors and doubts, before the King of Glory. And yet, he called me daughter. He reached out, and as I touched my soul, because there was no physical body left, I felt as if my whole life was passing before him. But not as a harsh judgment. It was like a father looking at a daughter who had fallen, but whom he had always loved, even with injured knees. It was then that he asked, "Why didn't you ever want to seek me fasting?" That took me by surprise. I wanted to ask so many things. Heaven, hell, the end of times. But Jesus went straight to the point, fasting. And before I could answer, he began to show me the burning question in me, why fast? When Jesus asked me about fasting, my soul fell silent. I wanted to justify it, to say that life was busy, that I didn't know how to start, that I had tried a few times. But before him, no excuse made sense, because there, I knew the truth. I never took fasting seriously. I never understood that he was more than going without food. I treated it as a distant religious ritual, not as an act of war, surrender, and intimacy with God. It was then that Jesus, with a deep and steady gaze, said, "Fasting is more than a practice. It is a spiritual language. When the body is silent, the spirit speaks." Those words burned inside me. He continued, "You lived surrounded by distractions, noises, voices, and they all drowned out mine. Fasting is the key that silences the world so that you hear heaven. That's when you invite me to dwell not only in your mind, but in your heart, in your body, in your spirit. Then, like in a movie, he began to show me scenes from my own life, moments when I needed direction, healing, comfort. And instead of seeking him deeply, I resorted to distractions, food, social media, empty conversations. He showed how, in the greatest spiritual battles I faced, fasting would have been a shield, a silent battle cry, a portal of revelation. And then, with tears in my eyes, I asked, "But why does the Lord show me this now? Why is fasting righteous?" And he answered, "Because time is short, and my people need to be sensitive. Fasting will be the forgotten weapon that many will need to recover before the Great Awakening." Those words echoed in eternity, and I understood it wasn't just about me. It was a call for all of us. What Jesus showed me, fasting as a spiritual weapon. As soon as Jesus finished speaking, a scene opened up before me, as if we were standing before a spiritual window. It was like watching a living vision, a revelation that spoke more than words could explain. I saw people kneeling in silence, with their eyes closed and their hands outstretched. Some were shaking, others were crying, they were fasting, and from each one a flame rose, an intense light that pierced the sky like a sword. It was prayer. In its pure state, as if fasting had torn the veil between the natural and the spiritual. Jesus explained to me, when one fasts sincerely in spirit and truth, it is not only the stomach that is emptied, it is the soul that purifies itself. The heart aligns with mine, the sky moves, demons retreat, invisible chains are broken. I saw demons trying to get close to some people. But when these people fasted, there was a shield around them. The attacks hit and came back. I saw homes being restored, addictions being broken, and hearts being transformed. All because someone decided to empty themselves, to be filled with God. And then he showed me something else. I saw a great spiritual battlefield. There was a war going on, but no one here on earth noticed. People walking, running, smiling, stuck in their routines, while all around, angels and demons engaged in intense fights. And Jesus said, "There are battles that are only won with fasting and prayer. That is why many are missing out without knowing why. They are trying to overcome in the physical what can only be overcome in the spirit." That's when I understood, with all my being, fasting is a hidden weapon, a neglected tool. But it is also a sacred key to access territories that meat would never reach. And then, as a warning, Jesus began to show me what happens when fasting is done the wrong way. Jesus then stretched out his hand, and before us a new vision appeared, but this time it was painful to watch. I saw people fasting, but something was wrong. They were on their knees, but their mouths murmured. His thoughts were elsewhere. Their hearts were far apart. Some fasted to lose weight, others to bargain with God, and others simply to show spirituality to others. What shocked me was to see that no light rose from these people. Contrary to what I saw before, when spiritual flames touched the heavens, there was only shadow, silence. And around some of these people, I saw dark beings laughing, mocking, walking in circles, as if nothing was preventing their presence. Jesus said to me, "It is not the outward act that moves the heavens, but the intention of the heart." Many fast, with their stomachs but not with their souls. They think they please me, but they do not listen to me. They think they are sacrificing, but they continue to feed pride, hatred, and vanity. I then saw an entire church fasting collectively. But there was no spiritual presence. I saw arrogant looks, competition, people judging each other. The atmosphere was cold, and the sky closed. And then Jesus pointed to a humble lady, alone at home, with a loaf of bread and a cup of water on the table. She was fasting. Nobody knew. But his bent knees trembled, and his tears fell to the ground like seeds. And I saw angels around her silently holding flaming swords. "That's the difference," Jesus said. "She doesn't fast out of habit. She fasts for love, for intimacy, and the sky moves through it." At that moment, I understood the weight of the revelation. It is not enough to fast. It is necessary to surrender. Fast with purpose, with humility, with repentance, and faith. Jesus then looked me in the eyes with tenderness and urgency and said, "Tell my people, the time for appearance is over. I seek the true ones." The urgent call, a new time of consecration. After the visions, Jesus stood before me with a look that mixed compassion and urgency. The atmosphere around us has changed. It was as if heaven had fallen silent for a moment to hear what he was about to say. His words came like trumpets in the spirit. "Time is getting shorter. My people need to wake up. I am calling for a new time of consecration, true, profound, and non-negotiable." At that moment, visions began to emerge around us, like windows opening one after the other. I saw young men in their rooms bending their knees. I saw mothers fasting for their lost children, businessmen surrendering their businesses in prayer, churches meeting not for concerts or agendas, but by brokenness. I also saw a crowd in tears, tearing not their clothes, but their hearts. It was like an invisible, silent, powerful movement. An awakening of fasting and repentance sweeping entire continents. People who had never prayed before now wept before God. I even saw world leaders being touched, and Jesus said, "I'm blowing a new wind. Those who listen to me and humble themselves in fasting and prayer will be strengthened. They will be used. They will be prepared for what is to come." He then showed me future scenes, crises, earthquakes, political and spiritual turmoil. But in the middle of it all, there were people on their knees, and around them, a glow like invisible walls. They were stored. They were lights in the midst of chaos. Jesus looked me in the eyes and firmly declared, "Consecration is the answer. Fasting will be the shield of the humble. Those who seek me in spirit and in truth will see miracles, provision, and direction, even in times of darkness." There I realized that this message was not just a testimony. It was a calling, a warning, a divine summons. And then gently he said, "You'll come back, and he will tell what he saw, because there is still time, but it's not enough." He returns to the body and a renewed mission. "Tell the world what I have revealed to you in the last." Vision, Jesus enveloped me with the most intense light I have ever felt. It was as if my whole being was being filled with a fire that did not burn, but purified. I knew it. Something was about to happen. He held my hand, looked into my soul, and said, "You'll come back, not by chance, but by purpose. Tell the world what I have revealed to you. Awaken those who sleep. Feed the hungry. Teach the value of fasting before it's too late." Before I could answer, the vision vanished like a breeze. I started to feel my body again. The pain, the sounds, the screams of the paramedics. Someone shouted, "She's back! She's back!" I woke up inside an ambulance on the way to St. Mary's Hospital in Tucson. My eyes opened slowly, and the first thing I whispered was, "Jesus, I'll tell you." The recovery was long. My body had suffered, but my soul, it had been renewed. And since that day, my life has never been the same. I can no longer live automatically. I can no longer ignore the Spirit. I can no longer pretend that fasting is optional. I saw what happens in the unseen world. I felt the eternal weight of this sacred practice. Today, my mission is clear: to bring this message to every heart that still thinks that fasting is just about going without food. No, it's about opening the heavens. It's about spiritual warfare. It's about intimacy with Jesus. If you've made it this far, it's no accident. Jesus is calling you, not for a religion, but for a real consecration. The time for distractions is over. The time for superficiality has passed. It is time to fast, pray, align. If this message touched your heart, share it so that more people will be blessed. Leave your comment, your testimony, your prayer request below, and subscribe to the channel, because together, we will awaken a generation that knows the power of fasting and the Holy Spirit. Jesus is coming back, and he is still calling. Will you answer?